They say marriage is about trust, communication, and shared dreams. What they don't tell you is that sometimes those dreams turn into nightmares, and the person sleeping next to you becomes a stranger who smells like someone else's cologne. My name is Evan McKinley, but everyone calls me Mac. I'm 45, a contractor who spent the last 20 years building other people's dreams while mine crumbled like poorly mixed concrete. I should have seen it coming. Hell, maybe I did see it coming and just chose to ignore the signs like a man walking past a bridge out sign in the fog. It was a Thursday night in October when my world shifted off its foundation. Marta, my wife of 18 years, was supposedly at another one of her fitness retreats, weekend getaways with her colleagues from the upscale gym where she worked as a corporate fitness manager. She'd been going to a lot of these lately, always coming back glowing and energized, talking about new workout techniques and team-building exercises. I was in our bedroom, looking for my old work boots in her closet, when I found the gym bag she'd forgotten to take. The zipper was slightly open, and something red caught my eye. Not the usual red of her workout gear, but something silky, lacy, expensive-looking. Something I'd never seen before. My hands moved before my brain could stop them. Inside the bag, nestled between protein bars and water bottles, I found lingerie that cost more than my monthly beer budget. Black lace, barely there fabric, tags still attached from some boutique downtown that I'd never heard of. Beneath that, a box of condoms, not the brand we used, not that we'd used any in months, but it was the note that really got me. Handwritten on expensive stationery. Can't wait for our private session this weekend. You make me feel alive again. Jay. I sat on our bed, the bed where we'd made love, fought, reconciled, and apparently where she'd planned her betrayal, and felt something cold settle in my chest. Not heartbreak, not yet. Something harder, more calculating. I'd always been good at solving problems, figuring out how things worked, finding the weak points in structures. This was just another kind of blueprint to decipher. I put everything back exactly as I'd found it, then went to my workshop in the basement. That's where I did my real thinking, surrounded by tools and half-finished projects. I pulled out a beer and considered my options. I could confront her directly, but that would give her time to cover her tracks, come up with excuses, maybe even turn it around on me somehow. Marta was good at that, making me feel like I was the problem, like I wasn't ambitious enough, successful enough, interesting enough. Or I could gather more evidence, find out exactly who Jay was and what they were up to. Knowledge was power, and right now, I needed all the power I could get. That's when I remembered old Barb from next door. She was retired, spent most of her time gardening and, if I'm being honest, keeping track of the neighborhood comings and goings. If anyone had noticed unusual activity around our house, it would be her. The next morning, I found her watering her prize-winning roses. "Morning, Barb. Beautiful flowers as always." She beamed at the compliment. "Why, thank you, Mac. How's Marta doing? I notice she's been working late a lot lately." "Oh, you know how it is in the fitness business. Always some new program or retreat to attend." Barb nodded knowingly. "Yes, I've seen that young man picking her up in that fancy car. Very handsome. Must be nice to have such dedicated colleagues." My grip tightened on my coffee mug. "Young man? Oh yes. Drives a silver BMW. Quite the looker, all muscles and perfect hair. They seem to have a lot of evening meetings." I kept my voice casual. "Ah, that must be one of the trainers from the gym. Team building, you know?" "Of course, dear. Though I must say they seem very enthusiastic about their work." After thanking Barb for the information, I went back inside and did what any reasonable man in the 21st century would do. I Googled Marta's workplace. The gym's website was sleek and professional, full of photos of beautiful people and expensive workout gear. I scrolled through the staff directory until I found him. Julian Carter, personal trainer and fitness consultant, 38 years old, certified in about a dozen different exercise programs, and exactly the kind of man who probably used more hair products than my wife. His bio mentioned his passionate approach to helping clients achieve their personal best, and his dedication to one-on-one intensive training sessions. I stared at his professional headshot, all white teeth and sculpted jawline, and felt that cold feeling in my chest spread outward. This wasn't some middle-aged crisis or momentary lapse in judgment. This was calculated, ongoing, and apparently quite serious if she was buying new lingerie and planning weekend getaways. That afternoon, I made a decision that would change everything. I drove to the electronics store and bought a small GPS tracker, the kind worried parents use to keep tabs on teenage drivers. I also stopped by a novelty shop and made a purchase that, at the time, seemed like a stroke of genius. When Marta came home that evening, she was practically glowing. Her hair was perfectly styled, despite supposedly coming from a workout, and she smelled like expensive perfume rather than gym sweat. "How was your day, honey?" she asked, kissing my cheek in that automatic way married people do. Same old, same old. How was the gym?" "Oh, busy. We're planning another retreat this weekend. Team building exercises, new fitness protocols to learn. I might be gone from Friday evening until Sunday afternoon." I nodded sympathetically. "Sounds intensive." "It is, but it's so important for professional development. Julian, he's one of our senior trainers. He's been mentoring me on advanced techniques." There it was, the name. The casual way she said it, like she'd been practicing in the mirror. "That's great, sweetheart. Professional development is so important." That night, after Marta fell asleep, I carefully planted the GPS tracker in her gym bag. Then I took out my other purchase from the novelty store, a small bottle of washable green dye, the kind used for St. Patrick's Day pranks, along with some itching powder I'd found in the joke section. I'd always been good with my hands, good at fixing things, modifying things, making them work better. The condoms in Marta's bag were about to get a very special modification. Working by the light of my phone's flashlight, I carefully opened each package, applied a thin layer of the green dye mixed with just a touch of itching powder to the lubricant, then resealed them so perfectly that no one would ever notice. It was delicate work, but I'd spent years doing detailed carpentry. My hands were steady. When I was finished, I put everything back exactly where I'd found it. Then I went to bed next to my wife and slept better than I had in months. Friday evening came, and Marta was a flutter of nervous energy, packing and repacking her bag, changing outfits 3 times, applying makeup with the kind of care usually reserved for job interviews or court appearances. "You look beautiful," I told her as she headed for the door. "Have fun at your retreat." She kissed me goodbye, and for just a moment I saw something in her eyes. Guilt, maybe, or regret, but it passed quickly, replaced by excitement. "I'll call you tomorrow," she promised. "I'll be here," I replied. Saturday was the longest day of my life. I tracked Marta's location on my phone, watching the little dot move across the city to the Riverside Motel, a place that advertised hourly and daily rates and probably hadn't updated its decor since the Carter administration. Not exactly the kind of establishment you'd expect a high-end gym to use for professional retreats. I spent the day working in my shop, building a new bookshelf for the living room, and trying not to think about what was happening in that motel room. Every few hours, I'd check the tracker. The dot stayed in the same location all day. Around 8 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Barb. "Mac, you need to see this. Come over to my backyard." I found her standing by her fence, which gave a perfect view of our driveway. She was holding her phone, and she had the expression of someone who'd just witnessed a car accident. "I was taking pictures of my evening primrose when I saw them pull up," she said, handing me the phone. "I thought you should know." The video was shaky but clear enough. Marta's car pulling into our driveway, followed by the silver BMW. But as the interior light came on when the car doors opened, I could see that both occupants were green. Not just a little green, but incredible Hulk green, like they'd been dipped in radioactive spinach. In the video, Marta stumbled out of her car, and even from a distance, I could see her scratching her arms. Julian emerged from the BMW looking like he'd lost a fight with a leprechaun, his perfect hair disheveled, his expensive workout clothes stained an alarming shade of emerald. They stood in the driveway for a moment, apparently arguing in heated whispers, both of them scratching various parts of their bodies. Then Marta pointed toward the house, and Julian shook his head vigorously. More arguing, more scratching, and finally Julian got back in his car and drove away, leaving green handprints on the door handle. Marta looked around nervously, then tried to sneak toward the house. She made it about halfway up the walkway before the motion sensor light came on, illuminating her in all her verdant glory. She froze like a deer in headlights, or in this case, like a very guilty, very green wife caught sneaking home from an affair. "Oh my," Barb whispered, though the video had been taken hours earlier. "She looks like she fell into a vat of food coloring." I handed the phone back, trying to keep my expression neutral. "That's unusual. Should I ask if everything's all right?" "Probably best not to get involved, Barb." I'm sure there's a perfectly reasonable explanation. There wasn't, of course. When Marta finally came inside, she headed straight for the bathroom. I heard the shower running for over an hour, and when she finally emerged, her skin was still faintly tinted green despite her obvious scrubbing efforts. "How was the retreat?" I asked innocently from the couch. "Fine," she said quickly, not making eye contact. We did some outdoor team building exercises. Got into some plants. Must have been some plants." She scratched her arm absently. "Yeah, some kind of reaction. I think I'm allergic to something they had us work with." You might want to take some antihistamines." "Good idea." She practically ran to the bedroom, and I heard her on the phone, speaking in urgent whispers. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was clear enough. Panic, anger, confusion. Sunday morning. Marta called in sick to work. She spent the day in the bathroom, alternating between scrubbing herself raw and applying various lotions and remedies she'd found online. By evening, the green had faded to a sickly yellow-brown, like an old bruise, and the itching seemed to have subsided somewhat. "I think I need to see a doctor," she announced over dinner. "This reaction is worse than I thought." "Ugh, probably a good idea. You never know what kind of chemicals might have been in those plants." She gave me a sharp look, but I kept my expression concerned and supportive. That night, she slept in the guest room, claiming she didn't want to risk me catching whatever had caused her allergic reaction. I didn't argue. Monday morning, I decided it was time to do a little more investigating. I drove to Murphy's Bar, a working-class establishment where a lot of the local contractors and blue-collar workers grabbed lunch. It was also, not coincidentally, where several of the gym's maintenance and cleaning staff liked to eat. I found Tommy Brennan, who'd done some electrical work for me a few years back, and now worked part-time maintaining equipment at Marta's gym. "Mac, good to see you, buddy. How's business?" "Can't complain. How about you? Still working at that fancy gym?" Tommy laughed. "Oh man, you wouldn't believe the drama over there. The whole staff's been talking about it all morning." "Drama?" "Yeah, apparently 2 of the managers had some kind of incident over the weekend. Came in today looking like they'd been in a fight with a paint factory. Green as grass, both of them, and scratching like they had fleas." I raised my eyebrows in mock surprise. "No kidding? The rumors are flying. Some people think it was a prank. Others think they got into some bad drugs. And a few of the more creative folks are suggesting they had a close encounter with radioactive waste. What do you think?" Tommy leaned in conspiratorially. "Between you and me, I think they were fooling around somewhere they shouldn't have been. The way they kept looking at each other, the way they both called in with the same allergic reaction story. If you ask me, somebody played a very clever prank on a couple of cheaters." I nodded thoughtfully. "Interesting theory. The best part is, the whole gym is buzzing about it. Apparently the woman, Marta something, she's usually Miss Perfect, always put together, always professional. Seeing her show up looking like the Wicked Witch of the West has everyone talking." I finished my beer and thanked Tommy for the entertainment. As I drove home, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: satisfaction. Not happiness, exactly, but the deep satisfaction of a job well done, a problem solved, a wrong addressed. But I was just getting started. That evening, Marta came home from her doctor's appointment, looking frustrated and embarrassed. "What did the doctor say?" I asked. "He said it looks like contact dermatitis from some kind of dye or chemical irritant. He gave me a prescription cream and said it should clear up in a few days." "Did you tell him about the team-building exercise?" She hesitated. I told him I must have come into contact with something during outdoor activities. You know, maybe you should report this to your gym. If they're using dangerous chemicals in their team-building exercises, other people could get hurt." The look she gave me could have melted steel. "I don't think that's necessary." "Well, you know best. I just worry about your safety." That night, she slept in the guest room again, and I slept like a baby, dreaming of green-tinted revenge and the look of panic in Julian Carter's perfect eyes. The war was just beginning. By Tuesday, the green had faded enough that Marta felt confident returning to work, though she wore long sleeves and more makeup than usual. She left the house with the grim determination of a soldier heading into battle, and I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I spent the morning working on a kitchen renovation for the Hendersons, but my mind was elsewhere. The GPS tracker showed that Marta had gone straight to the gym and stayed there, no detours, no mysterious meetings. It seemed my little prank had put a temporary damper on her extracurricular activities. Round lunchtime, I decided to pay a visit to my old friend Darren Murphy. We'd served together in the National Guard years ago, and he now ran a small security consulting business. More importantly, he was the kind of guy who knew how to find information and keep his mouth shut about where it came from. I found him in his office above Murphy's Bar. Yes, it was a family establishment. Darren was built like a brick wall with a buzz cut, and he had the kind of steady, calculating eyes that made people nervous when they had something to hide. Mac McKinley, as I live and breathe, what brings you to my humble establishment? Need some advice, Darren, hypothetically speaking. He leaned back in his chair and grinned. Hypothetically, huh? This should be good. What kind of hypothetical situation are we talking about? I gave him the basic outline. Cheating wife, smug lover, the need for information, and perhaps a little creative problem solving. I didn't mention the green dye incident. Some secrets were worth keeping. Hypothetically, Darren said when I finished, a man in such a situation might want to know more about this lover character. Background, habits, weaknesses, knowledge is power, after all. Hypothetically, yes. And hypothetically, a man might also want to consider that modern problems sometimes require modern solutions. Social media, online reviews, public reputation, these things matter a lot to people in the fitness industry. I nodded thoughtfully. Hypothetical, modern solutions. I like that. Give me a day or two. Hypothetically, I might be able to provide some interesting reading material about Mr. Perfect Trainer. That evening, I decided to do a little reconnaissance of my own. I drove to the gym around closing time and parked across the street, watching as employees left for the day. I recognized several people from the website photos, including a blonde woman who kept checking her phone and laughing at whatever she was reading. Around 9:30, Julian emerged from the building. Even from a distance, I could see that his usual swagger was somewhat diminished. He kept scratching his neck absently, and his perfect hair looked less than perfect. He got into his BMW and sat there for several minutes, talking on his phone with increasingly animated gestures. As he drove past my position, I got a good look at his face in the streetlight. His skin had the same yellowish tinge that Marta's had displayed, and there were visible scratch marks on his neck. He looked like a man who'd learned that actions have consequences, and he didn't seem to be enjoying the lesson. I followed him at a discreet distance as he drove to an upscale apartment complex downtown. He parked in the underground garage and disappeared into the elevator. I made note of the building name and address, information that might prove useful later. Wednesday morning brought an unexpected gift. Barb knocked on my door around 8 a.m., holding a plate of fresh muffins and wearing the expression of someone bursting with gossip. Mac, dear, I hope you don't mind me asking, but is everything all right with Marta? She seemed upset when she left for work this morning. Oh, you know how it is. Work stress. The fitness industry is very competitive.
Moving.
Barb nodded sympathetically. Of course. It's just that my sister's daughter works at that gym, Serena Walsh, lovely girl, and she mentioned there's been quite a bit of chatter about some kind of incident over the weekend. I tried to look confused. Incident? Something about two of the managers having some sort of reaction to something. Very embarrassing, apparently. The whole staff is talking about it. How unfortunate. Yes, well, you know how these things go. Once people start talking, she trailed off meaningfully. Serena says the rumors are getting quite creative. Social media can be so cruel these days. After Barb left, I did some social media investigating of my own. It didn't take long to find Serena Walsh's Instagram account, which was full of gym photos, fitness tips, and, more recently, some very interesting posts about workplace drama and karma in action. One post in particular caught my attention. A photo of what appeared to be green handprints on a bathroom mirror, with the caption, "When your professional development goes wrong, check #gym life #karma #green with envy." The post had dozens of comments, ranging from laughing emojis to questions about what had happened. Serena was being coy in her responses, but it was clear she was enjoying being at the center of the drama. I screenshotted everything, then did some more digging. Julian's Instagram was exactly what I'd expected. Shirtless selfies, motivational quotes, photos of expensive meals, and luxury gym equipment. His most recent posts had noticeably fewer likes than usual, and several of the comments were less than flattering. Dude, what happened to your skin? One person had asked under a recent selfie. Looking a little green around the gills lately. Another had commented. Heard you've been getting into some colorful situations, read a third. Julian wasn't responding to any of the comments. which suggested he was aware that his perfect image had taken a hit. Thursday brought a call from Darren. "Got that hypothetical information you wanted," he said. "Meet me at the usual place." The usual place was a corner booth at Murphy's Bar, far enough from the other patrons to ensure privacy. Darren slid a manila folder across the table. "Hypothetically speaking, your boy Julian is not quite the golden boy he pretends to be." I opened the folder and found a treasure trove of information. Julian's employment history showed a pattern of short-term positions at various gyms and fitness centers, usually leaving under circumstances that weren't entirely clear. There were also printouts of online reviews from former clients, several of which hinted at unprofessional behavior and inappropriate relationships. "Most interesting," Darren continued, "is his financial situation. Guy drives a BMW and wears expensive clothes, but his credit report tells a different story. He's maxed out on credit cards, behind on his rent, and recently took out a high-interest personal loan, so he's living beyond his means. Way beyond. The kind of guy who might be looking for a sugar mama to help fund his lifestyle." I studied the documents, feeling pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. "This is very helpful, hypothetically. There's more. Turns out he's got an ex-girlfriend who's not too happy with him. Sarah Mitchell works at a competing gym across town. Word is, he borrowed money from her and never paid it back. Also may have been seeing other women while they were together. Interesting. Think she might be willing to share her experiences? Hypothetically, a woman scorned might be very willing to share, especially if she thought it might prevent other women from making the same mistakes she did." That evening, I made a decision that would escalate things considerably. I created a fake email account and sent a carefully worded message to Sarah Mitchell, introducing myself as someone who was concerned about Julian Carter's professional conduct and wondering if she might be willing to share her experiences. The response came within hours. "I've been waiting for someone to ask," she wrote. "Julian Carter is a predator who uses his position to take advantage of women. I have photos, texts, and financial records that prove he's been running the same scam for years. When can we meet?" Friday afternoon, I met Sarah at a coffee shop downtown. She was an attractive brunette in her early 30s, with the kind of lean, muscular build that spoke of serious dedication to fitness. But her eyes held the hard edge of someone who'd been betrayed and was ready to fight back. "Julian's MO is always the same," she explained, sliding a thick folder across the table. "He targets older women with money, usually married women who are feeling neglected or insecure about their appearance. He makes them feel special, tells them they're beautiful, offers private training sessions that gradually become more personal." But I flipped through the folder, finding screenshots of text messages, photos, and even bank statements showing money transfers. "He borrowed $12,000 from me over 6 months," Sarah continued. "Always had some emergency car repairs, family medical bills, problems with his apartment deposit. I was stupid enough to believe him." What happened? "I found out he was running the same game on at least 3 other women. When I confronted him, he threatened to post intimate photos of me online if I didn't leave him alone." "Do you still have the photos he threatened you with?" She smiled grimly. "No, but I have photos he sent me, and videos. Julian's very proud of his body, and he's not shy about sharing it. The kind of stuff that would be very embarrassing if it ended up in the wrong hands. Hypothetically speaking, what would you do if you knew he was currently targeting another woman?" "Hypothetically, I'd do whatever it took to stop him. The man's a parasite, and he needs to be exposed." We talked for another hour, and by the time we parted ways, I had everything I needed to completely destroy Julian Carter's reputation and livelihood. Sarah had also given me her phone number and made me promise to keep her updated on whatever action I decided to take. That night, I sat in my workshop, surrounded by evidence of Julian's pattern of manipulation and fraud, and planned the next phase of my campaign. The green die had been just the opening shot. What came next would be much more devastating. Marta came home late that evening, claiming she'd been working on quarterly reports. She seemed nervous, distracted, and she kept checking her phone with increasing frustration. "Everything all right at work?" I asked. "Fine," she said quickly. "Just busy, lots of changes happening." "What kind of changes?" She hesitated. "Management is reassessing some of the staff. There might be some restructuring." "That sounds stressful." "It is." She went to bed early, and I heard her talking on the phone in hushed tones until well past midnight. Whatever she and Julian were discussing, it didn't sound like they were making plans for another romantic weekend. Saturday morning, I put my plan into motion. Using the information Sarah had provided, I created a comprehensive dossier on Julian Carter, his pattern of targeting vulnerable women, his financial desperation, his history of borrowing money and disappearing. I included screenshots of his text messages to multiple women, photos he'd sent, and bank records showing the money transfers. Then I did something that felt both terrifying and liberating. I sent copies to the Human Resources Department at Marta's gym, along with a note explaining that I was a concerned citizen who felt they should be aware of potential liability issues with one of their employees. I also sent copies to the management of 3 other gyms where Julian had previously worked, and to the state licensing board that oversaw fitness professionals. By Sunday evening, my phone was buzzing with text messages from Marta. Something's happened at work. Big meeting Monday morning. Don't know what's going on. HR wants to see me first thing. Very serious. Julian's not answering his phone. This is bad. I responded with appropriately supportive messages, expressing concern and offering to help however I could. Inside, I was counting down the hours until the reckoning began. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crisp October air that makes everything seem sharper, more vivid. Marta left for work, looking like she was heading to her own execution, her face pale beneath carefully applied makeup, her hands shaking as she checked her phone one final time before getting in her car. I tracked her progress via GPS, watching the little dot move across the city with unusual slowness, as if she was dreading her destination. She arrived at the gym 15 minutes later than usual and stayed in the parking lot for another 10 minutes before finally going inside. At 9:30, my phone rang. It was Sarah Mitchell. "Yeah, it's happening," she said, barely containing her excitement. "I just got a call from the state licensing board. They're opening an investigation into Julian's conduct based on the information someone provided. They want to interview me this afternoon." That's good news. There's more. My friend who works at Fitness First downtown says Julian was supposed to start a new job there next month, but they just called and rescinded the offer. Apparently, they received some very disturbing information about his background. I felt a warm glow of satisfaction. Sounds like his reputation is catching up with him. Oh, it gets better. Someone, and I have my suspicions about who, sent his entire dating profile from that expensive matchmaking service to his current employer. The one where he claims to be looking for financially secure women who appreciate the finer things in life. HR is not amused. Around noon, I decided to take a drive past the gym. The parking lot was buzzing with activity, more cars than usual for a weekday, and I could see groups of employees standing around talking animatedly. Whatever was happening inside, it was big enough to disrupt normal operations. I parked across the street and called Tommy Brennan. "Mac, perfect timing. You're not going to believe what's happening over here. Try me. All hell's breaking loose. That trainer I told you about, Julian, he got fired this morning. Security escorted him out and everything. But that's not the best part. There's more? Oh yeah. Turns out he's been running some kind of con game on female clients. The rumors are flying. Financial fraud, inappropriate relationships, the whole 9 yards. And get this. Apparently, one of the managers was involved with him. Word is, she's getting fired too." My grip tightened on the phone. No kidding. The staff is going crazy. Nobody knows who's next. Everybody's worried about their jobs, and the gossip mill is working overtime. I heard 3 different versions of the story just this morning, each one more dramatic than the last. What about the manager who was involved? Haven't seen her since she went into the HR office around 9. But I did see Julian in the parking lot around 11, loading boxes into his car and looking like someone had run over his dog. His perfect hair wasn't so perfect, if you know what I mean. After hanging up, I sat in my truck and watched the gym's front entrance. At 1:45, Marta emerged, walking quickly toward her car with her head down. Even from a distance, I could see that she'd been crying. She sat in her car for several minutes, talking on her phone with increasingly agitated gestures, before finally driving away. I followed the GPS tracker as she drove aimlessly around the city for over an hour, finally stopping at Riverside Park, the same park where we'd had our first date 20 years ago. The irony wasn't lost on me. I gave her 30 minutes alone with her thoughts, then drove to the park myself. I found her sitting on a bench overlooking the river, staring at the water with red-rimmed eyes. "Marta, what are you doing here?" She looked up, startled, then seemed to crumple in on herself. "Mac, I needed some air." I sat down beside her, maintaining the pretense of concerned husband. "You look upset. What happened?" For a moment, I thought she might tell me the truth. Her mouth opened and closed several times, and I could see her struggling with the words. I got fired, she finally said. What? Why? There was an incident at work, something involving one of the trainers. HR decided that I was too close to the situation to continue in my position. Too close how? She looked at me with desperate eyes, and I realized she was trying to gauge how much I knew, how much she could get away with not telling me. Julian, one of our trainers, he was involved in some kind of inappropriate behavior with clients. And because I worked closely with him, management felt it was best if I found other opportunities. That doesn't seem fair. You can't be held responsible for someone else's actions. It's more complicated than that. How complicated? She stood up abruptly, pacing to the edge of the river. I don't want to talk about this right now. Marta, we're married. Whatever's going on, we should face it together. She laughed, but it was a bitter sound with no humor in it. Together, right. What does that mean? She turned to face me, and for the first time in months, I saw the real Marta, not the polished, professional version she'd been presenting to the world, but the frightened, confused woman underneath. It means I've made some terrible mistakes, Mac, and I don't know how to fix them. What kind of mistakes? The kind that destroy everything. We stood there in silence for several minutes, watching the river flow past. I could feel her waiting for me to push harder, to demand details, to force a confrontation. Instead, I chose a different approach. You know, when I was building the Hendersons' kitchen last month, I made a mistake with the measurements, cut the cabinet doors wrong, wasted a whole day's work and about $300 in materials. She looked at me like I'd lost my mind. What does that have to do with anything? I had two choices. I could try to cover up the mistake, make excuses, blame the plans or the wood or the tools, or I could own up to it, tell the Hendersons what happened, and fix it properly. And I told them the truth. They weren't happy, but they respected the honesty, and